Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City of Casa Grande study session. It is 6 o'clock, so we'll get the meeting started. Larry, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I can, just spend a couple of minutes setting the table, if you will, and then I will actually hand it off to Scott to provide a bit of an overview and history on personnel policy amendments related to productive work week. That's what we're going to be presenting this evening. And I know the mayor and council in your council packet have a copy of the proposed amendments that essentially would be eliminating the productive work week language. Let me spend just a second outlining exactly what that means. It is essentially the language that drives how overtime is calculated. And so let me start by saying that essentially this particular proposal came to the city manager's office by employees in the employee group. And I think the primary driver that was driving that is that we currently do not count productive non-work hours towards overtime. And so as we began our research on this particular topic, we evaluated the existing policies of several municipalities around the state and in our region. We also had discussions with specific entities that had modified their policies to make the changes. I think the primary driver from the employees essentially was the fact that when they take a benefit that has been granted to them in an accrual time, paid time off, vacation, sick leave, whatever it may be, if they felt like it was penalizing them when they came in and worked overtime the following shift or within that particular pay period. I'm going to let Scott talk specifically about pay periods and the like. I know he's going to cover some of that. But as we began to evaluate the policy and look at the financial obligations related to that, what we found is around the state that there really are a variety of different policies out there, really four that you will find prevalent. You'll find a policy that's very similar to the one we have today, which does not count those non-productive work hours as part of your overtime. There are other policies that will count the benefits that you take as towards that particular, which is what is being proposed tonight. And there's what I consider to be the hybrid, which there are a handful of municipalities around the state that have carved out the benefits, the accrual times and like, and they've put them into buckets. So for example, you may find a city that will not pay overtime if an employee takes sick leave, and you may find another entity that may not pay it if they take vacation. So I'm considering them hybrid, if you will, in this analysis. What we did find is that those cities that have begun to move into a scenario of eliminating productive work week periods and the various elements there within, we found that they were doing it primarily as an enticement and added benefit for employees. Many of the policies that we found originated in negotiations under a memorandum of understanding with labor groups. And ultimately, the city elected to modify the policies for the entire organization. And I think that's important to note because from my perspective, we are recommending a policy change for the entire organization. This is not a specific impact or benefit to any one particular department or any one particular group. However, what you will find is that it really is focused on public safety, police and fire. They are the two departments that traditionally encounter overtime within their day-to-day operations, and those employees, and you can see from the information that I had sent out to council previous, the biggest financial impacts are within those departments. And so I'm going to let Scott talk a little bit about the proposed policy, a little bit of the history on what brought us to this point, what our policy has been over the years. I'll talk a little more about the financial obligations and how we intend to address that. What I'm looking for from council this evening are really two things. Number one is to make any comments that you might have on the proposed changes to the policy, because essentially the mayor and council will be required to consider the policy amendment. if you so choose. And the second is the timing of that, whether or not this is something that we would look to change over in this fiscal year that we're in, or start at a July 1 with a new fiscal year date. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Scott and let Scott move into more of the technical and history on this particular policy.
Thank you, Larry. And as Larry suggested this evening, we're discussing a policy relating to employee compensation, something that is called productive work period. Very simply put, this involves what hours are to be included in the total hours credited in a designated work period, not necessarily a work week, but a work period upon which the overtime calculation is based. And I want to point out up front that the current city policy has been in place since 2006. So over the last 17 plus years, we've been doing the same thing. By way of a little more background, the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, was passed way back in 1938 and has lots of issues around minimum wage and what have you. But it's been amended many times over the years, including amendments that were passed in 1974 and 1985 as it relates to applicability to municipal government employees. The FLSA includes all of the details concerning when an employer must pay an employee overtime. In response to the 1985 amendments, the City of Casa Grande implemented the provisions that provided for the selection of a work period of up to 28 consecutive days for public safety employees. It was called the 7K exemption. And meaning the overtime liability would not be calculated until the last day of the designated work period. Our policy says that all non-worked hours, vacation, sick, holiday, and other types of leave, are deducted from the total hours worked in a work period before overtime would be calculated. As Larry suggested, the largest impact is on police and fire. But back in 1985, we designated 7 consecutive days for most all of our employees, 14 consecutive days for uniformed employees in the fire department, and 28 consecutive days for uniformed employees in the fire department because of their shift schedule. In implementing that, though, and it's one of the curses of being around for so long, remembering all of those details, we really wrestled with the fact that the fire department somebody in the fire department could need to take a day of sick leave on day 1 of the 28-day work period, and would have to carry that liability all the way through 28 days. So we talked about that, we debated that, we sought special opinion, but the decision was ultimately made in 1985 to put only fire department uniformed employees on a totally non-productive work period. So that was chosen back in 1985. In other words, for those employees, all hours worked would count as hours worked when calculating, or all hours, worked or non-worked, would count as hours worked calculating overtime liability for those employees. Along the way, just by way of note, the Arizona legislature, as it chooses to from time to time, decided to step in relationship to law enforcement employees and basically said that you can only designate 7 consecutive days for law enforcement employees, and that trumped the federal FLSA. So since that legislation was passed a number of years ago, everybody has a 7 consecutive day work period except in the fire department. In 2006, there were several issues under discussion and consideration relating specifically to uniformed employees in the fire department. And through all of that debate and discussion, the decision was made to implement a productive work period for all fire department uniformed employees coming to work after July 1st of that year, 2006, and grandfather in all of the existing employees in their non-productive work period. So at that point in time, there were 2 classes of fire department uniformed employees created after July 1st, 2006. All those that were totally non-productive and all those going forward that would be productive. Now, there were a number of discussions and trade-offs, if you will, that went into that. At that time, we also moved from the 28-day work period for fire department employees to a 14-day work period. So for those employees who went totally productive, coming to work after July 1st, 2006, they just dealt with a 14-day work period, not a 28-day work period. There were also some issues related to accrual of leave time that were inconsistent, and those changes were made. But perhaps most significantly, in 2006, what we call a bump-up policy was implemented to compensate employees in acting roles. So if you think about talking about all of these issues together at that particular point in time, the bump-up policy was put in place. In other words, if a fire captain, for example, was absent from a shift, typically a fire engineer would bump up to captain, a firefighter would bump up to fire engineer, and then the vacant position would be filled. And those that were in those acting roles would be compensated for the time that they were acting. So that's automatically bump up. So we created all of the codes that were necessary for that. And so for the first time, prior to that time, the idea of and this isn't interim, this is bumping up, okay? The idea was that if you were in a bump up, if you were filling a role, that was part of what was going to happen as you were getting ready to step up in those promotional situations. But that changed in 2006, and so the bump up policy was put in place. And of course, that is how things have been over the last 17 plus years in relationship to all of those circumstances, including productive work period. And as Larry suggested, we always want to know what other cities do and in their operations, particularly those comparator cities that we compare ourselves with on the compensation plan. And so, as he suggested, they were all across the spectrum, some fully productive, some fully non-productive, some with carve-outs or hybrid, as Larry says, like holidays that not being included. And as he's also suggested, for some of those entities, and particularly some of the larger entities, those things had taken place and became a part of what they do through the meet and confer process in terms of formal relationship there. The city manager has already provided you with information on the dollar impact of calculations that we've done if the decision was made to implement a fully non-productive work period policy. As you might guess, the impact is substantially in the police and fire departments, and we estimate the total impact based on actuals for fiscal 22-23. We estimated the total impact at $300,000 plus salary-based fringe, and $250 of that $300 was in police and fire. So most of our other departments, the administrative departments, we default to compensatory time, not paid overtime. And so beyond that, in public works, sometimes in community services, parks maintenance, where they're paying overtime. So that's the picture in relationship to the productive work period issue. And so I think between the two of us, we'll try to answer any questions.
And so, Mr. Mayor, if we can answer any of the technical questions and focus primarily on the proposed modifications that were sent to the mayor and council in your council packet, if you have any specific questions on the removal. As I've indicated prior, the policy change is really pretty straightforward, right? You're essentially taking those non-work hours out of the equation. And so with that, we'd entertain any questions, and we can talk specifically about a start date thereafter.
Mr. Lavender.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So when we talk about the overtime that's being paid out, this is mandatory overtime, am I correct? These are assigned work hours that they're expected to work, and if they don't work, they could be subject to disciplinary action, am I correct?
I want to make sure that I'm understanding your question specifically, Councilmember Lavender. The calculations that we have made are for both. In the fire department, there is a standard overtime that is included in their 56-hour work week. That I would tell you that this particular policy and the modifications, the proposed modifications, will not impact that significantly. What we are talking about primarily is when an individual takes off for a shift and there's not a bump up,
right,
and we're hiring somebody to cover in that's where it's primarily applicable. So is that?
So I think I just heard you say, Larry, that firefighters work on average about 56 hours a week, correct?
Their standard work period is 56 hours.
Through a 40, what we call the 4896 schedule.
Right.
Right.
Councilmember Lavender, if you're referring specifically, you saw the policy relating to overtime, and it basically says that failure to work overtime is subjects an employee to disciplinary action. And the fact is, as Larry's indicated, there's built-in overtime in the, we call it FLSA overtime in the fire department schedule. Beyond that, we have policies relating to holdover and callback and what have you. But specifically, if an employee is directed to work overtime and they refuse that, they are subject to disciplinary action. But we have call-out lists, like in the Public
Right.
Works Department, because you never know whose might be available in the street division, for example, if we have a flood and they have to do barricades. So we have call-out lists. So the idea of somebody saying, you know, I had a tall one at home, and so I can't now go out and drive a city vehicle. We have to be able to allow
Right.
for that.
And so I get that. But I don't like the word overtime because this is part of their responsibilities. Where it's overtime because of federal laws of 40 hours a week. And so we're following that. But at the same time, this is the expectation. And so when they are requesting time off for vacation or they're requesting time off for sick leave, they're losing money because they're not working, because if they were working, and that's the dilemma that I see is we want to make sure our public safety officers, both fire, police, and all are healthy. We want a healthy workforce. And when we're have a policy in place that asks for somebody to make a decision when they may not be mentally alert and ready to work, if I take off today, I'm going to lose money for my family, and they're on the job when mentally or physically they shouldn't be there, I have an issue with that. And so for me, I'd like to see us vote on this, and I think we should retroact it to January 1st.
Bob?
Scott, could you address if comp time figures into productive work week? And also, you kind of touched on it just now, but can you address standby time if our employees are getting paid for standby?
Standby is extremely limited. Bob, right off the top of my head, you put me on the spot. I think I'm just saying it's very, very narrowly used, very infrequently used in terms of paying somebody to be on standby. The fact is that very early in the FLSA discussion, we talked about the issue of having employees subject to call back and having them be in pager range and what have you. And so actually we ended up asking for a letter from the Department of Labor to provide us clarification on what's restrictive, what's so restricted that we have to pay for. And that's well established at this point in time in case law. So as far as standby, it's not used a lot.
Okay. And the issue of comp time, if an employee takes comp time during the week, does that count against his productive time?
We have no comp time usage in the fire department, so it's total cost of service there is represented. It's a limited use in the police department, and it's used in most of our administrative and most of the other departments. And if it is accrued beyond the 40-hour, and if productive 40 hours, it has to be accrued at time and a half. Mm-hmm. If it's used, it is deducted before the overtime calculation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Lisa?
And I have similar concerns to Councilmember Lavender as far as, the employees, we have to remember these are earned benefits when it comes to paid time off, sick leave. And so to me, it just seems like it shouldn't be taken out. So I like the fact that we're changing this. I like the fact that it's for all employees. And as our city grows, our departments grow, I know it affects police and fire, but, we want a competitive edge too. So I personally like to see it removed rather than a hybrid because it's just so confusing. What we're going to include, what we're not going to include. And again, these are earned benefits that they've earned. So it shouldn't be complicated. They shouldn't have to, go in even though, they're going to have that overtime, go in on a sick day that they were going to take off. So I like the fact of just removing and not the hybrid. So and as far as, I'm open to retroacting or July, but I think effective January 1st would be, the right thing to do also.
Oh, Bob?
I had more.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, I mean,
Okay.
since you spoke.
Okay.
I wanted to agree with Lisa. I know from an employee standpoint, it doesn't feel fair. Because if I put in for 2 days vacation in 2 weeks, and I take those 2 days, and then 4 or 5 days later, there's some big incident, and I get called out, to be told, well, you're not getting overtime pay for those because you took vacation earlier in the week, that doesn't feel fair. And the amount of money we're talking about that you just quoted, I think there's only one reason to have this policy, and that's to save money. And of course, we're tasked with
Taxpayer money.
yeah, I mean, we have to spend that money smartly and conservatively, and we have to look for opportunities to save. But I know from experience that feeling of my hours got cut because I took a benefit, either sick or vacation, and now I'm not getting the time and a half overtime for something that may have called me out from home in the middle of the night and disrupted all of my family plans and everything. I think it just doesn't feel fair. And so I think I'm agreeing with Lisa in saying that I think the restrictions should be removed.
I would point out, call-out is paid at time and a half, no matter what.
Well, and I think that was an adjustment way back when this came on board. We kind of had to negotiate that for that very reason, but I appreciate that. That has been changed.
So that doesn't affect this? That doesn't affect this? If you get call-outs?
Call-out, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not in this equation? Okay, just make sure. Well, I'm going to come out and say that I don't think we should do it. I think that we are responsible for taxpayer money. I think that the benefits are benefits, right? So if somebody gets paid time off, PTO, they can use it when they want. They get paid, they're off work, they're not working. And I understand that it might cut some of their overtime pay that people tend to rely on, and I get that, I understand that. But I also think that, you know, it's a benefit for them to get the PTO and to take it when they want to take it. And that if it cuts out, you know, it cuts down on their time because they're now not getting paid overtime, it's part of the PTO. I mean, you're not working, right? They're not working. So they didn't actually work overtime in reality. So I don't come from that world, so, you know, I speak from more of a business background, and as a business person, you know, I want to pay my people fairly, I want to treat them right, I want them to be healthy, you know, to someone's point made earlier, but I also think that we should pay for work done. And if the work wasn't done, then why am I, as a citizen, paying overtime for somebody who didn't work overtime? So that's just my 2 cents. Anybody else?
I want to ask a couple of technical, or for me, when we started to switch to the PTO, which I think most people are on PTO now, did that affect this a lot, then, how this works, or not really?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Herman, I would not say that it affected it a lot because our employees were still accruing vacation and sick. And I don't know the exact number of individuals that we have on the vacation sick accrual. Last I saw, it was in 60 or 70 employees. It started out at 100, just to give everybody a context. But if the council will recall, on that particular policy, when we implemented it, we gave everybody the opportunity to change. We then ultimately said I think it was the next year, individuals had a right to select which program they wanted to be in, and then it was a hard stop after we had done the evaluation after a year. And every employee that has come on since that point has been assigned PTO. I think generally speaking, if you talk to the employees, those individuals that have moved to the PTO system, they will tell you that they're more happy with the flexibility of that particular program than they were with just the standard vacation sick. And I understand why some of the employees elected to stay in that program, but as far as an impact generally to this policy, I don't see it having a significant impact either way, if you're on PTO or
Okay.
vacation sick.
And then, so the other thing that is hard, or that's different, is that when you take a day off as an employee, say, that works in City Hall, that's eight hours typically. But if a firefighter or police, or mostly firefighters, that's 24 or 48 hours off, right? If you take off 2 shifts, so that's where this comes in. And then the other thing I'm concerned about is the budget, obviously. So I know you've given some numbers here, and I know that we put the overtime in the budget. So I'm concerned if it's in there for this year or next year, or how, and are we pretty sure with this number of 300,000?
It's a little more than that, isn't it, Larry? On an annualized basis.
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Herman, if I can, first of all, let me just go back and address a couple of the points that were made along the way in regards to the calculation. Then I'll move to the dollar figure question specifically. So, first and foremost, understand that typically the difference between public safety and most of the other operations in the organization is that when an employee in the public safety role takes a day off, we are backfilling. We have somebody coming in to serve in that spot. There are some exceptions in the fire department, but for the most part, there is a management decision that gets made about whether or not we're going to have somebody backfill. That's the driver of your overtime typically. Within the numbers that we've shared, the overall budget authority numbers, there are a number of grants that are specifically focused to police department now that is driving about a half of that overtime, that are grant funds for us to go out and provide a specific duty. And so just to make sure that's clear, I do want to come back and address Councilmember Huddleston's comment about comp time. Certainly in today's world, Mr. Barber is absolutely right. If somebody takes comp time, that gets counted as a non-worked hour. So they would, if they worked overtime the next shift, they would be paid straight time versus overtime. The employees are still getting paid straight time today until they've reached that 40-hour, that 56-hour threshold. With this policy, comp time would not be included at that point. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the financial aspects of it. And I think I've stressed this along the way. Determining the exact dollar figure to eliminate these productive pay, to modify the productive pay policy is very difficult to do, because every year your time off patterns are going to change. You're not going to take the same vacation time, PTO time, or sick time. And so what we did as a staff to establish the threshold, because we understood there was going to be a potential financial impact, is we went back to the prior, was it calendar year or fiscal year, Scott?
22, 23 fiscal.
22 fiscal year, and we essentially evaluated timesheet to timesheet if individuals had been paid straight time versus time and a half. That particular total, as we looked at 1 year as a snapshot, that particular total suggested that we would see an increase of roughly $300,000 in overtime expenses for that particular year. For that 1 year. I have annualized that in the number that I've given of $400,000, because we've had employee raises, and we've also added more employees.
Yeah, more employees.
So you can anticipate that both of those are going to drive an impact on this particular number. And so for fiscal year 25, we are anticipating somewhere in the vicinity, if everybody uses similar types of patterns, about a $400,000 additional impact in overtime costs.
Yeah, and so everybody understands this is it goes from 2.2 million that we pay out in overtime today to 2.6 million paid out in overtime, and that's forever. It doesn't go away. It's not, Yeah, and it'll keep growing as we add more employees, as we give raises.
The only point, Mr. Mayor, that I'd like to point out to that is that there is a sizable amount, probably half of the 2.2 million, that is attributed to grants, right? That it is not related to our day-to-day operations. It is grant funding that we specifically are allocated for specific detail where individuals are traditionally earning overtime to provide that.
And Larry,
particular
does this also impact the PSPRS?
Obviously, with any additional increase in wages, our PSPRS rate will increase. When I say rate will increase, the burden, the amount that we have to pay to PSPRS, the contributions will increase annually as well. I will say that we've recently got our actuarial reports from the PSPRS, and we have seen that they are proposing a higher rate for the upcoming year. We anticipate, as the council knows, we issued a bond to essentially fully fund the pensions for both systems, police and fire. And we had hoped that that would essentially give us a bit of a runway, if you will, on being 100% funded. But with some of the accrual adjustments, actuarial adjustments, we have seen that we have dropped from 100 to roughly 95 and 96% in each respective system. I talked to the mayor briefly about that today and explained that what we plan to do for next fiscal year is essentially allocated an additional $1.5 million to get that back to fully funded. But to answer your question, Mayor, anytime an employee earns additional money, and this will obviously do that for those individuals working overtime, the contribution to both ASRS as well as PSPRS will increase as well. Not the percentage, but the amount that is paid.
Right. Mr. Lavender?
And Larry, I'm not sure you did this, but when you talk about a $300,000 increase, did you look at how much of that $300,000 is this based on paying firefighters that are on vacation or sick leave that time and a half time they would be earning if they were working? What percentage of that $300,000 is this, or what is the percentage of that $300,000 because we're bringing somebody else in and paying them time and a half when that person's off? Do you have a rough?
I'm not sure that we analyzed it specifically of that nature. We essentially looked at a scenario where you had an employee that was off on one of the accrued times, one of the benefited times. If somebody had come in and were covering a shift, and we looked at the variance between what they were paid at straight time versus what they would have been paid at overtime.
Right. Because I think Councilmember Huddleston talked about a savings. We're also saving the city money by not having extra personnel to cover some of these shifts and asking people to come in as well. That's a cost in itself. And so there's all kinds of costs built in.
That particular scenario is really applied to some of the internal policies. Mr. Barber outlined one of those, the bump up. Those types of internal administrative policies that I know that all of our department directors are looking at are intended to, in an attempt to reduce the financial impact to the organization. And that includes items such as bump up, that includes items such as comp time and the like, where we're not having what I would consider to be a financial outflow of cash. We're ultimately using management tools to replace the financial obligation, if you will.
Matt?
I was going back to the grant portion of this.
Yes.
I mean, is that like Stone Garden type
Yes.
stuff? Do you know how much that is?
I don't have the exact number, but my understanding is that it would be nearly 1/2 of the 2.4 million. It's a sizable amount.
If we don't get that grant, then we wouldn't.
Those
Have that
costs
overtime.
would not be incurred.
Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
I mean, because that's like that's kind of a net zero.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
Mayor,
Lisa? Sorry, go ahead.
And Mayor, I wanted to go back to your point, because I really thought about this, as far as, having, again, your own business and how we calculate it. But again, you talk about an earned benefit. And so I understand your point, they're taking PTO, they're taking sick time, they're taking vacation, but they may have had this planned a year in advance, or, you know, whatever, and so they're still taking that PTO time, though. So they're taken away from their PTO, so why aren't they getting that number back in to calculate for the overtime? So these are still earned benefits that they're getting, and so I was, you know, really back and forth on the whole thing, but then when I thought about it and thought about the fairness and, you know, that these are earned benefits that they're using their PTO, they're using their sick time, so why aren't we letting them, you know, put those numbers in there? So, again, I just think it's the fair thing to do too.
Do you pay your employees?
Yeah.
Overtime when they use their PTO?
Because they use their sick time, so we have columns where they have 8 hours sick time, 8 hours, and then anything over, because those are calculated in the 40 hours, and then, you know, have them, you know, whatever, our employees don't work that much overtime. I mean, maybe 30 minutes, you know, staying a little bit over time, but we have columns where they have their hours allocated for each category, their earned benefits, and we keep track of all those, and it's in every paycheck. So, I don't know.
Okay.
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay, so I made some notes here because I know we're on time. But I think that, you know, and Lisa makes a good point. And I've looked at it from two different angles because I was 20 years nonprofit and 20 years government. And so I've seen both sides of the spectrum. When you talk about earned time, it is earned time. You know, employees work hard to build up their vacation time. We want them to use their sick time efficiently every way that they can. So that is earned time. And when we're talking about, Jeff mentioned it, retention is a really big issue. And that's part of, in today's world, employers are having to explain to people why you should want to work for us. And these are the benefits of why, and this is what we have. And one of those is the time off. And the PTO is a little bit different from what I currently have, but I like the idea that it's equal for all employees. It really has to be that. When we talk about the budget, I am concerned about where that's going to come from because of the fact, and you mentioned the going up to 2.6. I know that the police department is really great about having opportunities for those kind of grants. I don't know that the fire department has options for those kind of grants. And when they talk about overtime for police, it's like the Stone Garden or the DUI details that they have for, you know, for special things. So I think that it's hard to compare the two, and I think that the police department is a great example of using the best resources they can. I don't know that the fire department has done that, or they have the opportunity to do that, especially for overtime. I don't want money to be taken away or services to be taken away from other departments in order for this to happen. But I will say that I think, much like what Lisa said, you know, if I work a 40-hour week and I have 2 days that I take off at 8 hours vacation, right there 16 hours. And so to separate that, you know, from my regular, and that's how the county does it as well. So, I mean, I understand both, and I think the overtime and the time and a half is really important for us to look at. My worry is the budget and where it's going to come from and who it's going to affect, especially services from other departments.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just address that very, very quickly for Councilwoman McBride. First and foremost, we are not, the proposal would not be to ask other departments that may not have an overtime liability, if you will, to cover the budget authority necessary for the departments that may. Our plan is to ultimately look within each department to come up with the savings. Ultimately, as I sit here today, I anticipate that our revenue stream will offset the additional costs associated with the proposal. I can say that. If there is a time, and there may very well be at some point in time, that that this becomes something that becomes more evaluated, I would say that it's very likely that it will get evaluated within our total compensation, meaning that we, each year or at least the last 3 years, we've worked diligently to re-implement the comp and class analysis. We've been trying to look at other benefits. We've been attempting to look at other types of income streams that we can implement in this organization. Intuitively, just like we have with overtime in the past, if we anticipate, we will be projecting it very early on as part of the budget, and if there are shortfalls, then it will likely come within other types of pay or benefits that we would be allocating that particular fiscal year. That would be at least my strategy to look at. But I'm not anticipating any reductions in programs and services at the present time. We would essentially ask each department to participate in some level of what I would consider to be a similar type of increase for this particular modification, policy modification to the impact of their budget, their departmental budget.
Thank you.
I just think that this whole productive work period is just kind of an end around in terms of people feeling like they're not compensated enough. If it's a compensation issue, then let's deal with it from a compensation issue. Why? These are benefits, and people get time off. It shouldn't count towards overtime. That's just my opinion. So, obviously, we'll have to address this at some point in time, and I'm sure it'll be coming back to City Council. So, I'm sure we'll have more spirited conversation about it. But I think we need to move on. I think we've talked about this enough. Can we move to item? Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, just make one closing statement because you're absolutely right. Council must consider a resolution that would amend the policy. That would be the actual step. And certainly, we can put together a resolution that can continue the discussion on the part of the council before a vote. I do want to address the issue about retro. That is something that I'm going to have to look into as to whether or not that we could retroactively pay a benefit. I'm uncertain at this point. I can look into that. I definitely believe that once the resolution is passed and cured, we could implement this fiscal year and/or start it on July 1st with the new fiscal year. But I will put that evaluation and those options in the request for council action along with the policy amendment.
Well, there probably should be two different resolutions then, one for the start time and then one for the actual policy change.
Okay, we'll evaluate that on our team, Mayor, and certainly articulate that.
Do the time change first.
Okay.
Just my suggestion.
If
All right.
there's no other questions, Mr. Mayor, I'll move on to the next topic, which is a presentation related to the Sun Corridor Metropolitan Planning Organization, the SCMPO Regional Transportation Plan. And it's an update, and that will be presented by Miss Amy Moran. I know that she needs no formal introduction, but Amy, I'll hand the baton to you.
All right, thank you, Larry, and Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's good to be back here. I know I've got a bit of a compressed schedule here, so I'm going to try to walk through this program and hit the highlights. I will just maybe jump to something I would have intended to mention at the end, but the actual draft document of the Regional Transportation Plan is currently on the Sun Corridor MPO website in its entirety. For the public comment period through February 10th. So if there's information that I touch on today and you want to dig a little deeper, feel free to go in there and read through the whole thing yourself. So just as a reminder, the Sun Corridor MPO is the designated planning area or organization for the cities of Casa Grande, Coolidge, Eloy, and rural portions of Pinal County. It encompasses shy of about 1,200 square miles and a population of about 150,000 people. This regional transportation plan is a requirement. It's federally mandated to be updated every 4 years. That is because portions of the planning area are in what's called an air quality non-attainment area for PM 2.5 and PM 10 particulates. So they're required every 4 years to look at a plan of how they're going to invest their monies over the next 20 to 25 years to inform transportation investments. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the objectives, some of the metrics that we use as we go through this process, what we did during the course of the project as it related to outreach, and then ultimately what did we decide upon for the recommended investment strategy and how that relates to some of these projects of opportunity for the future. Objectives, again, I mentioned the federal requirements. There's also ADOT targets that need to be addressed. We wanted to make sure that we were engaging stakeholders. We wanted to make sure the plan was multimodal in nature. We really wanted to focus on investment strategies and opportunities, and again, making sure that we're adhering to those air quality conformity needs. Why are we doing this? What are we looking at? What are we up against? In a nutshell, population and employment are both anticipated to approximately triple over the next 25 years. And so that's some considerable growth. And I'm sure as you know, residents of the area, you recognize that there are already challenges with the transportation system. And so just thinking about how those could continue to grow as the population and number of employees in the region triples. I mentioned those ADOT targets. So ADOT is required, as it looks at its transportation plan and the performance of its network, to report on a variety of measures that you can see here. This is very particular to the actual state highway system, so the national highway system. The Sun Corridor MPO, through the RTP process, has decided in the past that in perpetuity they would also adopt these ADOT goals. So we need to address these in the context of the plan. However, we know that the greater majority of the transportation corridors and services within the Sun Corridor MPO region do not fall on state highways. There's a lot of roadways within the region. And so as a group, it was decided that as the RTP was formed and recommendations were made, we wanted to make sure that we were also looking at the performance of the more local street systems. So focusing on those arterial and collector roads. How are people moving around? What are the conditions of the roadway system? How are we making decisions that help foster economic vitality? Looking again at what can we be doing better as it relates to transit service and ridership, and recognizing that it's multimodal. So we need to, again, think about bicycles and pedestrians as well. And of course, environmental impacts. So all of these are addressed at the local level in addition to those ADOT targets. Oops. We did have what I call essentially 2 stages of robust public and stakeholder outreach. The first was early in the process, so just about a year ago. And then later we had our second round. That both of them included public engagement, and in the early phases we had some very particular stakeholder interviews, and now at the end of the process we're here reaching out to the various city councils and as well as the county board of supervisors. Those first rounds of interviews, it was a varied group. In addition to representatives from each of the member agencies, planning and economic development departments, we talked to Arizona Game and Fish, State Land Department, and the Army National Guard. And some of the things that we heard, of course, was the need for new roads, the talk about redundancy. So in other words, having parallel corridors should something happen in one, what are our options? Maintenance, of course, is always important. And one of the interesting things I think that we heard was the need to make sure that people have options to get to work. So work was really important. Some of that factored in was transit. And then I know even here locally, one of the things we heard was freight, and I know that's an important consideration for Casa Grande. Public engagement, we had a variety of options. We did pop-up events, which is basically piggybacking off of an event that's already planned in a community and having presence at those events. We also advertised on buses so that people could scan a code and go and do an online survey while they were taking a transit trip. And then we also used utility bill inserts in some areas. We got about 130 people that responded. Our outreach was in both English and in Spanish. And what we learned was that, yes, no surprise, the greater majority of people associate driving as their primary mode of transportation. What was interesting, I thought, was that you can see there just about 20% of people also identified that walking was a really important mode to them. And that's a little bit different than what we have seen in some of the other communities and regions across Arizona. Primary trip purposes, work, no surprise, shopping, as well as medical, school, and then a variety of others. When we asked about their priorities, what was important for us to consider as we look at investing money, by the greatest response had to do with improving the existing road conditions and increasing capacity of existing roads and bridges. So focusing on what we have and just making sure that they're performing well, or could we perhaps perform better. We also had, of course, a huge interest in that safety component, so that number 56 that you see there, as well as a pretty significant interest in expanding transit. When we went out to the second round, we were a little bit more concentrated on how do we think the money should be spent. So we were asking questions. We attended here at the Silent Witness event in Casa Grande in person, and we also had a supplemental online survey that folks could go on. We did a variety of activities at that in-person event, and collectively when we asked about identified priorities, and we looked at a range of, ranging from safety to, looking at roadways, implementing technology, focusing on transit, the greater majority of people were really, really concerned about safety, as I think we all are. And so that's always kind of top of the list when we talk about transportation investments. There was quite an emphasis on environment and technology, and I'll just touch on that a little bit. Especially here in Casa Grande, we had a pretty high percentage of the participants that were youth. And so when you start to talk about the environment and you talk about technology, I think those are things that they all associate with quite easily. Some of the people that were responding maybe aren't even drivers of the roadway system, so they're not even old enough to have a driver's license. So they may not identify quite as well as, well, there's a lot of potholes on the road that need to get fixed or something like that. So that's maybe where some of that feedback came. But of course, then we do still see the need for new and wider roads and maintenance as well. So when we ask them, how do we want to invest money? Should we be preserving what we have? Should we be modernizing or enhancing what we have? Or should we be expanding, so adding new roads, new roadway miles? It was relatively split. They thought all of it was important. We need to be looking at all of it. So when we get to the actual plan and we develop this recommended investment strategy, we certainly have to think about what the public is telling us. We need to look at those metrics that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, and we need to look at how our system and services are performing relative to those metrics. Where might we need to be making investments to move the needle to enhance some of those areas? And so where we landed was a recommended investment choice of 50% of funds going towards modernization. So those would be safety improvements, ADA compliance, technology. Expansion was 15%, so that's building new roads, bridges, trails, or additional roadway lanes. And then 35% for preservation. So that's taking care of our pavement and bridge conditions through rehabilitation or reconstruction. So there in the center, you see what the recommended investment choice. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the actual Suncor MPO resources. So this is money that is directly obligated to Suncor MPO. They need to decide how to spend it. You can see historically they've done fairly well in adhering to that recommended investment choice. On the right-hand side, you see if you look at all of the regional resources, so that's that money that's directly obligated to them, as well as money that they receive from grants, for example, Highway Safety Improvement Program monies. Those are competitive grants for which communities in the Sun Corridor must apply and be selected. They've actually dedicated a higher portion of the total regional resources towards that modernization category, as well as the expansion category. And again, a lot of that is just quite simply because that's where those grant opportunities exist. This one is, again, just comparing the center, the recommended investment choice versus the total regional resources. And then on the left-hand side, you see the public investment choice of the third. And this is just really to illustrate, there may have been concern about, wow, we're only saying 15% to expansion as our recommended investment choice. The public is telling us 36%. Well, if you look at how money is actually being allocated in the region, it's a quite larger percentage than that 15%. So we think that the 15%, 35%, 50% is a recommended investment choice, recognizing that there are other grant opportunities to help supplement those resources, can bring us a little bit closer to what the public is telling us they want to see as well. while keeping in mind that we have an obligation to try to maintain some of these metrics as it relates to the goal setting for ADOT and for the local roadway system. The plan itself is just that. It's a recommended investment choice or strategy. So it's not calling out specific projects like you might see in a capital improvement plan where it says, with this money, we're going to build this, 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 and this. Rather, it's just saying, this is how you think we think you should be investing the money. But we do want to recognize that we need to identify some projects of opportunity that they could perhaps be thinking about, right, in the future as they think about spending this money. And so we called those projects of opportunity. We looked at, what was in the previous plan, what of that is still relevant? What else might be required to address the adopted performance targets? What might be needed to address regional priorities? And then this last one is kind of important. It's what should be included for future grant opportunities. A lot of those grants that are out there, particularly the federal grants, they're going to ask the question, is this project identified in a regionally adopted plan? If you can answer yes, you're already a step ahead from somebody who has to say no. So we want to make sure that if there's a project that a community thinks it could potentially be going after grant monies for in the future, we want to make sure it's on the list. So there's a very comprehensive list of these projects of opportunity that can be found in the appendix of the Regional Transportation Plan. I'm not sure if you guys got that in your handout. I know that we have a separate extract of that. If you're interested, we could certainly get it to you. I'm just going to highlight a few. The East-West Corridor, that was, back in 2015, a design concept report was prepared. This is the corridor that would connect SR 347 in Maricopa or to I-10 here in Casa Grande, largely on the Val Vista corridor. The county is, in fact, getting ready to look at a more detailed study for that as we speak. The north-south corridor, again, has some regional significance for the Sun Corridor MPO region, connecting I-10 up to US 60 in the north. Interstate 11, of course, a large, regional priority and priority for the state. They're looking at different phases of that environmental assessment. Of course, here we've been talking about it for years, right? The I-10 widening that DCR and EA wrapped up in 2023, and still looking for money, but still forging ahead. And I know it's a huge priority for the region. Phoenix-Tucson passenger rail. NEIS was done back in 2016. There has been some money that's been appropriated to now dig in a little deeper into that and see what some of those options might be, so that continues to move along. There's a Central Arizona Parkway, which would be a parallel route to the north-south corridor in the northeastern portion of Pinal County that could have some regional significance, particularly to Coolidge and Eloy. Here in Casa Grande, a couple projects that were meant freight corridor roadway improvement projects. So that's at Thornton Road and Cottonwood Lane and Treacle Road and Jimmy Kerr Boulevard. And then the I-10 and Courtson Road interchange. I went through that really fast, but I got 2 minutes left. I will just mention that the goal is to have this regional transportation plan adopted by the Sun Corridor MPO Executive Board in March 2024 to adhere to the timelines, and that's really right now just pending the air quality conformity analyses that's being done. So with that, we got about a minute and a half for questions.
That was quick. Well done. Matt?
I just had one question. I don't know if you can go back, but there was a vertical bar graph before the horizontal one, and it seemed that they didn't jibe to me. Yes.
Yes.
So improving, I'm pointing on my screen, but you can't see it. Improving existing road conditions and increasing capacity seems like the lion's share, and building new roads, right? Mm-hmm. And then expanding transit, which is different, which we've done. Thank you, Lisa, Mike, and
Yes.
the board, everybody. But then when you go to the next graph, it switches drastically to
This one?
Safety. Whereas, and why are we getting two different results there? Because it seems to me that everybody I talk to, the people that I represent here, want more roads, bigger roads, and smoother roads,
Yeah.
which could be safety technically, but.
And a lot of that does relate to safety. A couple of things. First and foremost, I'll say that in that second round, so this is the second round of outreach, right? As compared to the first round of outreach. The initial round of outreach was largely online.
Okay.
So there wasn't as great of an opportunity perhaps to sort of explain some of the concepts. The second round of outreach was largely in person. So it was literally myself or one of my peers standing there talking to the people and saying, I'm going to give you 6 marbles
dots or- yeah.
and here's examples of these types of things and how are these important to you?
Okay, so transportation nerds like did the first ones, and then you got people that were more involved on the second one, okay. Because that's just the thing, and then safety is kind of broad, because that could be
It is.
wider roads, or less potholes, or bike lanes, or sidewalks, or new roads, so.
And plus
Yes.
the fact that the in-person, I noticed, was at the Coolidge, Eloy, and
Casa
Casa
Grande.
Grande Gain Silent Witness
Yes.
sites, so that they were surrounded.
Safety
about
oriented.
issues.
Yes,
Exactly.
good point.
Yes.
But I think what you said, the important part is having those projects listed, and they can fall under safety, or under
Right.
new, or under,
Yeah.
expansion, so.
And one of the
As long
things
as we get the funding.
one of the things I didn't really touch on, but there is an evaluation process as the member agencies are applying for the money that's obligated to Suncor or MPO. And though there are a variety of factors in weighting where they ask about all of the questions, what components relate to safety, what components relate to mobility, what components relate to, so those things are all considered when they're making the actual selection of projects that would receive funds.
Thank you. You did a great job on time.
Yeah.
And we could go longer, because I know guys.
The mayor's pretty lenient, aren't you, for that?
Go ahead, Lisa.
No, and Amy, I wanted to thank you. Yes, great job in the presentation and just being, part of those surveys. I was at Silent Witness when I did this little survey, and you gave me the marbles, and you and Irene were explaining things. And so it's nice to see, and especially having you personally there, because you are the expert and you were able to explain to people, and I saw you engaging with the community. So I just wanted to thank you for doing that. So it's
Well-
nice to see the results.
It's always a pleasure to come down to Casa Grande, and I appreciate, that you all do often stop by for those events. So it's nice to see you there as well. And I thank you for your time. And if nobody else has any other
Any
questions.
other questions for Amy? Thank you, Amy.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tell Irene we missed her when she's sitting on the beach in Hawaii.
Is she still there?
Yes, yes, she's
still there.
All right.
You're going to be.
We will stand adjourned. We will start again at 10 after.
Yeah, in 5 days. Head out.
For 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Fun.
Get around.
Yeah, when is that?
Awesome. I need.
everyone. Welcome to tonight's city council meeting. Sorry we're starting about 10 minutes late. It is 7:10. We call the meeting to order. Our first two items on our agenda are our invocation and our pledge of allegiance. Tonight we have Pastor Jeff Foster from the Crossroads Church to lead us in our invocation. And please remain standing for our pledge of allegiance. Thank you.
I got permission from the mayor to address everyone here. So I have my back to you all, but this is addressed to everybody. I'm asking that we consider an urgent prayer for our nation. And it doesn't take long for us to see that our country and our world is in serious trouble. Every day we hear of reports of growing crime, lawlessness, and violence. So what do? In your quiet time, I encourage you to pray for our leadership at all levels of government, that you pray for our first responders, our schools, our churches, our city, our council member. Pray for our families. Husbands, pray for your wives. Wives, pray for your husbands. Parents, pray for your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And if there were young people here tonight, I'd be asking them to pray for the parents and their grandparents. I believe in the power of prayer, and I trust that you do. So in closing, Heavenly Father, guide the city council members this evening. Give them discernment, give them wisdom, give them encouragement, give them new insights as we enter this new year of 2024. Bless their families, protect them, guide them, strengthen their faith, hope, and trust in you, Lord. We thank you for the leadership that's here present this evening. Bless this time. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Jeff. Thank you, Pastor Anthony. All right, let the roll call show that all council members are present.
So noted.
We have the minutes, item number C on the agenda tonight.
Mr. Mayor, move to approve minutes of the council regular meeting of January 2nd, 2024. Also accepting minutes of the Arts and Humanities Commission meeting of December 5th, 2023. Consider accepting the Casa Grande Planning and Zoning Commission minutes of December 7th, 2023.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Claims against the city, item D.
Mayor McFarland, I move to accept and pay the claims dated December 27th, 2023 through January 9th, 2024 as presented.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the claims are approved. Our next item is item E, which is our meeting agenda. I do have one change. We have an executive session tonight, so I'm going to move item N, which is our reports, to just before item M, which is our executive session. Are there any other changes, Mr. Raines?
Yeah, none, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone on the council? Any changes? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So move.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, meeting agenda is approved as amended. All right, next is our consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one roll call vote of the council. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or member of the public so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Is there anyone on the council who wants to remove anything from the consent agenda?
No.
Anybody from the public? All right, seeing none, then I will call
Mayor
for...
McFarland, I would move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, we are now at item H, which is our public comments section, and this is an opportunity for the public to address the council. I would ask that you approach the podium and state your name and your address for our records, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and also understand that this is not an agendized item, so we cannot make comment on it. So, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. My name is Charles Cork. I live at 116 East Date Street on the south side of the tracks. I'm up here to talk about the homeless situation that we have in this city. We had a program in place where they were staying at the churches one night a week. That hasn't happened for the past 3 months. Something broke. What we really have in this town, besides a thing to help the homeless, is we have an enabling program. We feed them, we help them a little bit, but we don't help them get back on their feet. What we desperately need is a facility where a person can walk up, talk to a counselor, be evaluated. They can say, you have a substance abuse problem, you have a mental health problem, or you just have fallen on bad luck, and address that issue properly. If they have a substance abuse problem, put them in a program where they can deal with it. If they have a mental health issue, get them some care. If they need a chance to reset, provide that for them. Give them a safe place to sleep, a place to stay, not a free ride, not a free load, not a vacation plan, but a get you back on your feet plan. And I've seen that done in a couple of different places. It's something I feel quite strongly about because I am a member of a Crossroads Church and I have helped take care of the people. I spend all night with them when they're up there. And one night it hit me as I was sitting there listening to all these people snore. It was like a Three Stooges movie. I mean, it was incredibly loud. They're relaxed. They're safe for one night. That's not fair. That's really not fair. We have all kinds of private individuals trying to help. We have some public individuals trying to help, but there's no coordination between. So I would really like to ask the city to consider trying to provide a facility where we could put people in and let them reset themselves. And I'm not just complaining because this past Thursday I came up here and picked up the packet to file to run for city council. I'm not a politician, I'm a citizen. I want to take care of my fellow citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to address the council? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment section and we'll move to item I-1, considering approval of resolution number 5612.
Thank you, Mayor. With your permission, I'd like to present the next two items together and
Please.
then let you vote on them separately. So tonight, staff is recommending that the mayor and city council accept and execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation for two safety improvement projects through their HSIP program. These projects are located on Florence Boulevard, and one is at Peart and one is at Colorado. So those are the two intersections that are impacted by this project. Both projects are to construct or increase the size of the existing turn lane at Peart and then construct a median and put a turn lane in at Colorado, and that's west of Colorado, so about 300 feet west. These projects were evaluated through our MPO program. They had a consultant come in and look at all of our crash data that identifies each of these locations throughout our city, and then we prioritize each of those areas and these two were the top of our priority list. And the reason they rose to the top of our priority list were because of the number of accidents and then, of course, unfortunately, fatalities at both of those locations. So that's what drove the approval of these projects through this safety program. The first one, which is the Peart Boulevard project, it's estimated the construction cost is going to be $504,083, and the city's portion of that is 5.7%, and that's $28,733. Fortunately, we were able to find some savings on a previous project, and ADOT allows us to reallocate those funds. And we were given $58,776 to reallocate. So that's what we're choosing to do. So we'll be offsetting the out-of-pocket cost, and so the $28,733 is going to be covered by those excess funds. And then on the Colorado and Peart project, that project came out at a total of 580, the Colorado and Florence Boulevard project. That project total was $588,040, and then our 5.7% share of that was $33,519. So we're able to take the remainder of those excess funds from that previous project to offset that out-of-pocket cost for a total out-of-pocket cost for us of $3,476. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, Bob?
Kevin, is the measurement of success a reduction in crashes?
Well, obviously, it's going to reduce crashes, and most importantly, hopefully eliminate the possibility of fatalities, or if there are accidents, they'll be less severe. And that's what we find without that median control throughout that entire Florence Boulevard, we have increased accidents, the jaywalking. There's a lot of different factors that weigh into that. And they do a detailed evaluation of the cost benefit of making these improvements, and then hopefully the outcome of those improvements. And they saw real improvements as a potential, and that's why they approved these projects.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And Kevin, the Peart project is extending the left turn lane, right?
Yeah, the
because
median-
it already exists.
The
so
median currently exists, so they'll be extending that, and I can't remember the exact distance.
like we did it on Treckle.
Correct,
on
we did that one
Cottonwood.
in-house. This will be ADOT doing that
Okay.
project for us.
Okay. Matt?
Kevin, I know that we had outreach online. We talked about it, and I was wondering what kind of responses you got for that. I'll just give you a couple questions real quick.
Okay.
And then, number two, did we talk to these business owners, both the businesses and the landowners, about access to their place? I mean, what kind of concerns they might have about it? And then, what was number three? Anyway, that's the two I
Three.
got so far. I'll think about it.
Okay. First question, hell, I can't remember it.
Feedback from the
Oh,
community.
Yeah,
thank you.
feedback on our
So,
surveys.
We did do a pamphlet that we mailed out to each of the property owners, and we received no feedback online for that. We did not go out and individually contact business owners and have conversations with them.
Because a lot of times in these centers that are affected here, the property owners are not the business owners that will be directly, how is property owner be affected as well? But, so that's a concern I have. And then, the other one would be, art. We talked about our streetscape, and I listened to people online, talked to people about this that are concerned. And will we have room for like metal sculptures in these medians, or plants, or I don't know. We don't want plants because you have to water them and take care of them. Would there be room for that? Is there something in the budget for that? Is that okay with ADOT?
So this
Because
project,
we're talking about I know this is not part of our streetscape project. I don't want to confuse the two, I know. But if we're making investments, why not do it, at the same time, if there's room or what? I'm not sure how that works.
yeah, so these will be hardscape projects, so very similar to the median that was constructed as part of the Lowe's project in between Potty Bomb and Peart. So it's just a concrete median. That does not preclude us from doing landscape in the future. It's a thin layer of concrete, so it's more of an aesthetic cover. So removing that and doing other improvements is not a barrier for us.
So when we get to
be
our
able do that.
streetscape project, we could include
We
something.
could absolutely do that. We could turn it into stamped concrete or decorative rock or a lot of different opportunities, as well as landscaping if that's what we chose to do.
Okay, thank you.
Donna?
Kevin, I have a question on the Florence Boulevard and Pert Road, because traveling that road, and I know we've had a lot of concerns and complaints about the traffic, especially before and after school. Did they talk about how this was going to impact? Because, I mean, I go through there all the time, and I think that that's part of the issue of that traffic in that area. My concern is because of that school, even though it's not on Florence Boulevard, there'll be 20, 25 cars backed up, going into Pert Road on that. And that's my only concern, is how we're gonna navigate that a little bit during that construction.
Well, clearly during construction, obviously, we'll work with ADOT to try and time that construction so that it has the least amount of impact on the traveling public. On Florence Boulevard, unfortunately, that's very difficult to find a moment like that during the year. So if we're able to schedule that during the summer, obviously, that's what we'll push for and try and get out of when we have all of our winter visitors here. So we'll try and do that.
I just certainly think that if it is during the school year, we need to probably make direct contact with the school, because that's been a real safety issue in that area.
Yeah, but unfortunately, anytime we do anything on Florence Boulevard, we're going to have an impact negatively as we do those projects. But unfortunately, we don't have any other alternatives if we want to change what's out there and make it more efficient. But these projects will help improve the efficiency of that intersection, especially that eastbound to northbound movement. We'll have more queuing opportunity, and then hopefully with some improvements, tweaking of that traffic signal, we can impact that traffic in a positive way.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else?
I had one more specifically.
You're only allowed two.
Thanks.
He originally said 3.
Yeah.
So,
He covered himself.
On the, on the Colorado one specifically, it looked like the median I don't know if this is probably to scale since it's from your engineer, you guys do it over there. There was one about the 300 feet in the new part. I'm trying to pull it up again here.
yeah, so the total median improvement is about 500 feet, 300 feet of center median, and then 200 feet of turn lane is the way I looked at that. And, I hope that's accurate.
So, yeah,
But I don't know if that drawing was as accurate as it
Here's my
probably
concern
could have
about looking at this drawing is that, so the last few feet, if you're going westbound on Florence and want to make a left into the center with Papa John's and the Chinese food restaurant and the tire shop, it's blocking the westernmost entrance. So I was wondering if that could be a left turn lane, or if we have to do it how ADOT says. You know what I mean?
Right now, there's no left turn lane designed for that. People going into that center, if they're westbound, they would make a left turn at the intersection and then enter that project from there, off of
Colorado, yeah. I was just wondering if that's possible to make
It does not preclude us from doing that in the future, as long as we have an engineering study that shows that we're able to safely do that. Those types of improvements haven't been considered at this point, but as we move forward with potentially future improvement projects along that corridor, we'll be looking at where those access points should be and where they can be safely installed.
Because that's the only one that would, it's a better turn lane, and that's the only one that would really, I think, be affected mostly, but the rest of it. But I'm just interested to hear from them. I know we can vote on this tonight, and we still have to come back and get a second read.
And we can always do additional outreach, and at any time in the future before this project starts, if we decide to change our mind, we can always back out. So
Okay. 'Cause
this
I really want to hear
enables-
from the business owners.
This
just to
enables
make
us
sure.
to get the grant funds secured And then if we reach out and there's outcry not to do this, then we can bring that back to you.
Great.
So we'll do a hand out the pamphlets to the actual business operators, not owners, if that's
Yeah.
what the case is, and we'll make sure we get that.
Because
to you.
someone owns that strip center, I'm sure, right? And then you have about 6 people that operate a business in that strip center, so they'll be more affected. But I just want to make sure that everyone's heard. But as far as the safety aspect, I like, it's very important. And if we have the data to back that up, obviously the state and you and your department did that. So I'm looking at Dwayne back there. I'm sure he had a big part of it. Thank you. But yeah, but I think that would be a good thing. So, because I haven't heard too much complaints, but I just want to make sure that we're good at it and that we can put the art in there as well when we do our streetscape. So.
Well, we're very fortunate to have the MPO in place, and this gives us that particular access to those safety funds, which we didn't have before we had that MPO in place. So this is a great
Just going
program,
through the
and we've taken advantage of it on 5 or 6 different projects now.
Good. And thank you for bringing that up too after we had our report tonight. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyone else? All right, seeing no other comments, then I'm going to call for a separate resolution on these two. So I-1 is Resolution 5612.
Resolution number 5612, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the state of Arizona and the city of Casa Grande for the purpose of acquiring funds from the Highway Safety Improvement Program for median and turn lane improvements at Florence Boulevard and Pierre Road intersection, authorizing expenditure of public funds and the use of excess HSIP funds for the use and the city's required match, authorizing the execution of an agreement by the city manager, and authorizing the transfer of budget authority.
Mayor McFarland, I move that we approve Resolution 5612 as presented.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender,
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston,
Yes.
Councilmember McBride,
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, the second half of this is Resolution number 5613. Please, Gloria.
Resolution number 5613, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the state of Arizona and the city of Casa Grande for the purpose of acquiring funds from the Highway Safety Improvement Program for median and turn lane improvements at Florence Boulevard and Colorado Street intersection, authorizing, authorizing expenditure of public funds and the use of excess HSIP funds for the use as the city's required match, authorizing the transfer of budget authority, and authorizing the execution of the agreement.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of resolution number 5613 as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender,
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston,
Yes.
Councilmember McBride,
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, move to the next item on our agenda. Is I-3. This is considering approval of resolution number 5617.
This one has a slightly increased financial impact than the last one, just so there's no shock and awe here. Staff is recommending that the mayor and city council award a contract to PCL Contracting for our GMP number 3, and this is for our wastewater treatment plant expansion. You'll recall that Wilson and Company, Brian McBride, their representative, did a presentation to council on August 1st of 2022, explaining our wastewater expansion plan. And part of that plan was the expansion of our wastewater treatment process. So we are working through the project now with GMP number 3, our final GMP, which will get us to the finish line. GMP number 1 for our wastewater plant expansion, and GMP number 2 were lead time items that we needed to get ordered so that we could try and keep pace with our goal to get this finished as quickly as we can so that we can continue to say yes to development and industry moving into our community. So GMP number 3, we have worked very hard to manage the cost associated with that. You've seen the increases that we've had on just about every project that we've presented this past couple of years through this economic impact of COVID and everything else, but our team really did work hard to try and manage the cost of this expansion. And when you really get down and look at it, our price per gallon for our expansion is very affordable when you look at what we could be expending. So this phase of the project is for $30,713,519. And we are also asking for a contingency of $1,286,481 for a total authorizing spending authority of $32 million. Let's see. The construction project schedule for this is a 597-day construction window. So we'll hopefully be wrapping up final completion of this project in September of '25. So it'll be an aggressive schedule to get us to that point, but work's already started out there, getting prepped for things to get going. So we're looking forward to getting this started. With that, I'll just pause and see if there are any questions.
Kevin, what this gives us up to a capacity of what, 18 million?
Yeah, so
From
we're
our
currently
current-
at 12 million gallons a day capacity. This will take us to 18 million gallons a day capacity. And I forgot to mention, we're staying within our existing footprint. So we're not expanding the size of the plant. We are just making the existing systems more efficient to treat more waste. So we are not impacting the quality of our effluent. We'll still be producing A-plus quality effluent. And we're building in a lot of additional redundancy and capability just to handle additional waste loads. So our process is becoming more efficient. We're hoping to see cost savings with our daily operational costs once these improvements are made, and hopefully a lot of other benefits as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Kevin? We had this in a study session, so
Yeah.
shouldn't have been a shock. Although it's a lot of money.
It is.
All right, well, seeing no questions from the council, then I will call for a resolution number, please, Gloria.
Resolution number 5617, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting the proposal from PCL Construction, Inc. to provide construction manager at risk services for the water reclamation facility upgrade construction project, authorizing expenditure of public funds, authorizing the transfer of budget authority, and authorizing the execution of a contract.
Mayor McFarland, I would move for approval of resolution number 5617 as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender,
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston,
Yes.
Councilmember McBride,
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, let's move to item I-4. This is considering resolution number 5616.
Mayor and members of the council, the approval of this resolution is a request to approve the procurement of replacement computer hardware using a NASBO Value Point Master Agreement. IT has reached the 5-year point of its computer replacement program and has conducted hardware assessments of the computer equipment scheduled for replacement. The Finance Department, Planning and Development, Police, and Fire are the departments that are slated to have computers replaced in fiscal year '24 in accordance with the agency-wide computer replacement program. IT engaged Planning and Development and Finance to identify any changes that should be made to departmental asset counts, allocations, and overall technical capabilities. Enterprise software implementations such as the Tyler Technologies Enterprise ERP Munis system were also taken into consideration. Quotes have been received for the replacement of finance and planning and development computers in the amount of $74,135 for both departments. In addition to the approval of the contract, staff is requesting authorization to procure additional replacement computer equipment for the police and fire departments up to $212,296, which is the remaining operating budget authorized for computer replacement in fiscal year '24. The total authorized spending threshold for fiscal year '24 was $386,750. The same procurement process applied to planning and development and finance will also be extended to public safety. I can answer any questions you may have.
Questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. Seeing none, then I'll call for resolution number, please, Gloria.
Resolution number 5616, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a proposal from SHI International Corp. For the purchase of computer hardware, authorizing the expenditure of public funds, and authorizing execution of a contract with or purchase order to SHI International Corp.
Mayor McFarland, I move that we approve Resolution 5616 as presented.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, we'll move to item K, which is our next item on our agenda. These are ordinances and resolutions and other matters or subjects requiring action by the council. Our first item is item K1, considering a resolution number 5619.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This resolution would establish a policy for the allowing the implementation for maintenance improvement districts. If you'll recall, we briefed council on this topic, I believe, at your November 6th study session. But to refresh your memory, the purpose of a maintenance improvement district really is to create an insurance policy to protect us in the event that a homeowners association would fail. Specifically, homeowners associations associated with the residential subdivisions, and the maintenance improvement district could step in and help guarantee that the drainage facilities, the subdivision level drainage facilities, such as drainage channels and retention basins, would continue to be maintained and function. The maintenance improvement district could ensure that the perimeter walls to these residential developments were maintained and the perimeter landscaping was maintained, which is of course important to maintaining a good image for the community. Again, this would be a fail-safe and only used in the case of a failure of a HOA and where the staff could not, work with the residents to make sure that the HOA stayed functioning within its responsibilities. If council adopts this resolution this evening, we would still have to come back to council with creation of a maintenance improvement district with each residential subdivision. We'd bring that back to council for your consideration as a companion item when you're considering the final plat. So this doesn't impose the maintenance improvement district on any subdivision. It just sort of sets forth the rules and the process for that to occur. And the final decision to create or not create a maintenance improvement district would rest with council with a future decision with each residential final plat. In addition, once the Maintenance Improvement District was created, council would sit as the board of directors in a similar fashion that you sit as the board of directors on CFDs. And so in that capacity, you would annually determine what mill levy, if any, would be levied with the Maintenance Improvement District, and what improvements, if any, would be undertaken by that Maintenance Improvement District. So council has a lot of opportunities to engage in, how these maintenance improvement districts would actually function in the future. This sort of just sets the stage to allow us to move forward and bring these forward as a recommendation in conjunction with final plats. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Paul, would it affect existing subdivisions?
It would not.
So just future subdivisions?
Yes, and the reason, theoretically, it could if somebody wanted to create one, but just like a CFD, I believe it takes 51% of the property owners to consent, so that would be tough to do with an existing subdivision.
Okay.
Not impossible if an HOA was dysfunctional and those residents wanted to do something, they probably could.
Okay.
But we envision it really happening just with new subdivisions where the developer controls all the property.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? But an existing one could, if, in case there was a...
I believe it could. I'll ask for some legal advice here.
Yeah, an existing subdivision certainly could ask the council to create an MID.
Okay.
But to Paul's point, the bigger the subdivision, the more signatures you would need in order to do that.
Because we do have a couple that are half-filled, that are not very functional. Might be an opportunity for them, that's all I'm thinking. So, okay. Matt?
Just to be clear, the city doesn't want to go into the HOA business. This is
No.
kind of a last resort, and to basically keep up probably drainage flows and landscaping and stuff like that, right, would be probably the main.
Yes, this would be a last resort for us to have to actually activate.
I just want to be clear that it's not something we want, it's just kind of in case something bad happens.
It's our insurance policy.
Yes.
Fail-safe.
I was just curious if there are any failed HOAs. I mean, you
There
said
are.
there's a few that, okay, there are.
There's one I
Okay.
know of, for
Okay.
sure.
Yes, there are.
There's probably more than
There's-
one.
There's one that I know of where the retention basin is just not being maintained at all.
Nor the landscape's not
And the
maintained.
landscape's not being maintained,
Yes.
that's right, and it's on one of our arterial roadways, and the good news is there's some vacant lots in there, and we're talking with the developer who's purchasing the vacant lots in a way to kind of reactivate the HOA,
Right.
and we're hopeful that that's gonna happen, but yes, there are some failed HOAs in the community.
And in those cases, we could stand it up, but then they could take it over too.
That's true.
So it may be just to your point, a fail-safe situation where, yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments, then I will call for a resolution number, please.
Resolution number 5619, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, declaring as a public record and adopting the city of Casa Grande Maintenance Improvement District policy for subdivision development.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of resolution number 5619 as presented.
Second.
Oh,
Sorry.
didn't hear that over the cough. Sorry. All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, the next item on our agenda is item L1. This is a public hearing and land on biennial certification of the land use assumptions. That's a mouthful.
Mayor and members of the council, this public hearing is in relation to the report on applying agreed-upon procedures regarding the biennial certification of land use assumptions, infrastructure improvement plan, and the development impact fees, commonly referred to as a biennial DIF audit. Arizona Revised Statute 9-463.05 is a statute that gives municipalities the authority to impose development fees to offset costs to the municipality associated with providing necessary public services to a development. Heinfeld Meach performed this agreed-upon procedures engagement to assist management of the city with the requirements set forth in ARS 9-463.05 G2 to provide a biennial certified audit of this municipality's land use assumptions, infrastructure improvements plan, and development fees. The specific procedures performed are outlined in the report that Heinfeld Meach issued. The report only included one finding, that there were that was a tongue twister. The report included one finding that there were variances noted for growth projections related to new housing units, new non-residential square footage, and population as reported in the land use assumptions when compared to actual results. This finding is one that is in virtually every audit or biennial report issued in all cities, as cities will never hit the projected growth numbers exactly as the development impact fee study indicates. And this is in large part due to the fact that it's based on a 5-year projection of growth based on current census data. So that's what this public hearing is for.
Okay. Does council have any questions?
No, just a comment that if every city, is not reaching that, then perhaps they need to relook that and take that out.
All right. Well, this is a public hearing, so I will open the floor. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council on item number L1? This is, again, our audit on the biennial certification of land use assumptions. All right, seeing no one jump up, I will close the public hearing, and do we need to have a vote on this at all? We don't, do we?
We don't, it was only.
It's just a public hearing,
We're
okay.
only required to have a public hearing.
Okay. All right, well, very good, then. That concludes most of our business. We do have some reports still, so I'll start to my left. Mr. Lavender?
Yes, sir. It was a disappointment on Thursday that our annual Unity March had to be called off because of weather, but it was quite a storm that went through, so we're glad we didn't do it. But I want to thank Anthony Edwards for making himself available to the middle schools to go out and give the speech that he was going to give out here on Thursday. I also want to commend the work of Lisa and Anthony and our committee leader, Scott McEwen, on the Martin Luther King Day of Service. It was a huge success. Mayor, thank you for the development of the proclamation honoring Pastor Humes. I know that his wife, Linda, was very touched by that. It was a great turnout. We had students from all 3 of our high schools represented. The Vista ROTC program was very impressive in the work that they did on the food boxes. So just a great day. I think it's a tradition. Last year it got rained out, but I hope it's a tradition that continues to grow. I want to congratulate our new high school board president, who's sitting in the back, Mr. Wilkie, for his willingness to serve. Also, I wanted to share with everybody a story of grit and perseverance. Our Union Cheer squad, as many of you know, they lost probably their key member of the squad because she was the center of a lot of the routines they were doing in the tragic shooting of Haley Stevens. At first, they weren't going to compete anymore. And then through a process of grieving and stuff, they decided to go ahead and compete. This last weekend, they redid the entire show, and then on Friday, 2 of their team members got injured. And so again, they decided, you know what, we're just not going to do this. And then they reflected again, redid the entire show Friday night and Saturday morning. They competed Saturday, got 3rd place in their division with a score of 90 out of 100 and qualified for the National Cheer Championships the weekend of February 16th and 18th.
That's huge.
In Anaheim. So just again, everything that team has gone through, to be able to qualify for nationals is just a great testament. Also, last week, we also lost a student at Vista, Alan Benitez, in a tragic motorcycle accident this Thursday night at 6 o'clock. The students and staff at Vista Grande are doing a candlelight vigil for Alan as well. And please keep that school in your thoughts and prayers as they are grieving for one of their students. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lavender. Donna?
Just a couple things, reminder, as probably everybody knows, the big street fair is this weekend, the 20th and 21st. Holly is still looking for some volunteers, several different shifts, so if you are going to be out and about down there, please contact her to help her out. And then during that time, our library, Friends of the Library, will be having their big sale down on Florence Street. They'll actually be in the building where the old Black Box Foundation Theater was. They'll be down there for a few weeks, so please go down and support them. If you recall, we have a bookmobile, largely because of this group and what they've done and raised some money, so please do that. And then congratulations to our local DECA, who had a great showing representing Casa Grande, and I think Drake, if it's Drake from the Youth Commission,
Yes.
was highlighted, I believe, by the mayor of Sierra Vista.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great that they publicly recognized him. So that's it.
Thank you, Donna. Matt?
Thanks. We had a youth commission meeting on Saturday morning, and I'll say two of the cheerleaders made it to the meeting and then went off to their competition and did good. So those kids do a lot, and they're really great group. We moved a few things around. We had to postpone our 20th anniversary celebration to make it bigger and better so we can get better in contact. So listen for that. It'll probably be in the fall at this point. Just a lot of things happen, and that's going to work out a lot better. And then the chamber annual dinner is on the 26th, on Friday, next Friday, or 2 Fridays. And then the Taco Fest is March 30th, don't forget. And I had an interesting thing, a friend of mine who happens to be the mayor of Prescott Valley posted on his Instagram that Casa Grande recently partnered with APS and their local adult and student artists to help put some culture and life into what would be a normally dull APS transformer. So what do you think? I bet we have some amazing artists, so let's spruce up Prescott Valley. So they're using our idea, so it's working statewide, Gloria, so thank you. So it's just neat to see that a lot of people, not just us, notice what we do. And so it makes a difference.
That's very cool.
For people. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Matt. Anthony?
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm so thankful to Scott McEwen, as Mr. Lavender had mentioned, Scott McEwen, and also the committee for the MLK Day of Service. We had a wonderful time, a very big turnout. It was very, very good. Also, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much on behalf of Sister Linda Humes and the proclamation for her husband, Juan Humes. Thank you and appreciate you and the time that you've shown, even your love towards that family and building her up, lifting her up. Also, the mayor of Sierra Vista sent me a picture of our guy. I got the picture
of Drake.
He's a good friend of mine. He's a pastor as well as I am. And so he sent a picture. He says, "Do you know this guy?" And he's with DECA, and he just finished winning. Took first place. Matter of fact, Maestas.
Yes.
Drake Maestas.
Drake. And so he did send me the picture. He said, "Do you know this guy?" I'm like, "Yes, he's from Casa Grande, and our youth commission is good too, and the DECA program is good." And so, but anyways, I was able to toot my horn a little bit. But I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be able to serve our community, and so thankful for once again the turnout and all those supporters of the MLK Day of Service, and we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and want to continue to grow with that. And I believe that's it.
All right.
And thank you also, Anthony. I felt like Pastor Juan was right there. I don't know about you guys that were there. I just felt like his voice was, you were him. So it just really brought a lot of emotions. But no, it was, thank you. And one more thing, of course, we had a great day on Monday with all the kids. It was great seeing the kids, and they were excited to get out there and roll their paintbrushes, clean up trash and everything. But But thanks to the city staff, I mean, we met with sanitation department, they worked, the Cass Grande PD, Wendy was
Yes.
working with us, trying to make this whole graffiti thing. It's the first time we've done it. We have some little tweaks we have to make if we do it in the future, but, you know, the kids loved it. You know, they really did, and the community was excited to help. So, but, you know, great participation, and Jeff, you know, for bringing all your students and clubs, and, you know, the LDS missionaries were there, you know, all the high schools, even Mission Heights was there. So good event. I'm looking forward to that in the future. The point in time count, the homeless point in time count is next week. There's a training tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Cass Grande Police Department. So if anyone is interested in participating in the annual point in time count, you have to go through the training, and that's tomorrow. And then next week is the actual count. The day is on Wednesday, the 24th, but the city's gonna, I think we're gonna do it 2 or 3 days next week. So at tomorrow's training, they're gonna have, get people that want to participate and put together calendars and schedules of who's gonna be able to go out and count the next day. Speaking of the homeless, the Faith Alliance has been meeting on a regular basis. As you guys know, there was a pause in the I Help overnight shelter program, and that happened just before Thanksgiving. We identified a couple, we opened it, tested it, started with 4 churches, went to 6 churches, now we're at 8 churches, and we identified a gap in the vetting process, and so we have to make sure that our commitment to the churches was to make sure that everyone, the participants and the volunteers are safe. And so we've been working with the police department and our fellow partners in the Valley, the Phoenix area that do this program to make sure that we have this, all set. So February 1st, it's starting up again. It's going to 2 days a week. Started at 1 day a week. Obviously, we would love it every day a week, but, we're getting there slowly. In Tempe, it started 1 day a week, and 17 years later, they're at every day. So definitely something we strive toward, and the churches have been wonderful, and volunteers are wonderful. Again, this isn't an end-all to the homeless problem. It's a certain population that we're trying to help get off the streets and get work. So that's an update. Cesar Chavez Memorial Committee, Jeff and I are on this committee. We have the application available, so if anyone, it's online, if anyone has a high school senior that is going on to college, they can go on to the CesarChavezPenel.org website, and the application is live. It is due on March 6th, and you can email your application to G. Leja. Gloria is also on the committee. gleja.chavez.committee@gmail.com. And you can, by March 6th, it must be emailed actually by midnight. Yeah, midnight on Friday, March 8th. Oh, so it's on March 8th, Gloria. So, and the presentation of scholarships will be on April 12th, and that'll be at 6 p.m. at the Neon Park. And I think that's it for me, Mayor.
All right.
Yeah, the only thing I have to report is that I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks on vacation, leave on the 21st, and I'll be back on Sunday, the 4th of February. I'm going to have to miss a couple of items that I was looking forward to, and that's the Lucid ribbon cutting, I think is still set on the 24th.
Yep.
And the chamber dinner as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bob. Well, first of all, I want to wish Matt Herman a happy birthday tomorrow. Day early, ahead of time. Happy birthday.
29.
Yes, was it 23 or 22?
23.
23, okay.
Getting up there.
All right. And on a lighter note, the legislature's back in session. So that's becoming my full-time job now for the next 100 days.
I forgot to talk about
Going to keep on them. Also, just a little note. My granddaughter plays on the varsity soccer team, and they won last week. They beat Saguaro Tucson 5-2, and I think one of the girls got their picture on the front page of the sports section. That was pretty exciting, and that's the most wins. Apparently, we're 6-2 now. They're 6-2. Most wins they've had since 2017, and they still have like 4 games left to go. So
They also won the Apache Junction holiday tournament as well.
Yep, the holiday tournament. So, and they're mostly freshmen and sophomores. So this team's going to be around a while. So hopefully you'll be hearing that they're national champions in a couple of years. I'll come in especially just for that. And we did the garbage truck art this past week, which was, I know Matt mentioned it, but we did the dedication on 6 trucks this week and met the artists. They all got an award for being selected. But not to be deterred, there will be more garbage trucks that we are going to put art on the side of. So by this summer, right, Gloria? We're going to try and do all of them. So we have a lot more trucks to put art on. So if you're interested, keep an eye on the city's website, and I'm sure that there'll be notifications coming out on when to and how to apply. As Cesar Chavez has their scholarships, Pinal 40 also does scholarships, pinal40.org. So if there are any seniors out there, or even those who are already in college, you can still apply. And it is a perpetual application, meaning you can reapply every year. And so it's about $2,000 a year. So I'd encourage anyone who knows any seniors who are looking for money to help for college and or extended, education. It doesn't have to be college. It can be welding school or something like that. So look online, again, Pinal, like the county, 40.org, and look under scholarships, and you can see the application there. Fire Station 503, vertical, really, by the end of this month? I know they're starting on the foundations, starting on the foundations. So so by the 20th, look for structure to go vertical. That'll be exciting. We're gonna have a topping off ceremony. Okay. Anyway, I think that's probably it. Oh yeah, I did want to mention and I know Matt mentioned this briefly, but the Southwest Taco Fest. Mark your calendars, March 30th. It's from 1 to 9. It's at Dave White Regional Park. It's going to be a great event. We're going to have Roger Klein and the Peacemakers there. So it's going to be a party, and it should be a great time. March 30th should be perfect weather. So it should be a great time. And then also, if you have any friends in Chicago or St. Paul, Minnesota, have them look for about 20 billboards that are up in St. Paul and Chicago that show today's high in Casa Grande, Arizona, 70 degrees on their billboards. I think it's hysterical. And we've already gotten some comments. So experiencecasagrande.com. This is your destination marketing organization at work. They are our tourism arm, and so we're trying to spread our wings and spread the word about Casa Grande. So some good things going on. And I want to congratulate all the winners of the Holiday Lights Festival. I know we didn't really make a big deal of it here at the council. It was put out on social media, but I did want to acknowledge the People's Choice winner was on Judy Drive, and that was Darla DeWald. So congratulations, Darla. And then the Griswold Award went to a Birch Street home, and that's Melissa Higuera. And then the Gingerbread Award went to a home on Rio Place, and that was Corey Bonencontri. Bonencontri. There you go. Thank you, Matt. So congratulations to all those winners, and great job. I think it's an amazing program that we do every year, and thanks to Gloria and her team and all really the whole streets, not streets, but the community service division and streets for the garbage trucks. Thank you, Kevin, to your team. It's a great deal. So that's all I've got. Thank you, everybody, and I'll call for a move to executive session, please.
So moved. Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We will stand adjourned for a couple minutes to clear the room, and then we'll move into executive session.
Talk to that guy, can I?
Yeah.